Hey everyone, welcome back. You know how sometimes after you hit your head, even if it doesn't seem like a big deal, you get those headaches that just won't quit?
Oh, yeah. Those post-traumatic headaches, or PTH, as the researchers like to call them, can be really debilitating.
Totally. So today we're going to dive deep into the science behind those PTH, specifically after a mild traumatic brain injury.
Okay, so we're talking concussions, not like major head trauma, right?
Exactly. And we've got this super interesting study to help us understand what's actually happening in the brain when those headaches strike.
Hit me with it. What's the study called?
All right, get ready for a mouthful. It's called Altered Hypothalamic Functional Connectivity in Post-Traumatic Headache After Mild Traumatic Brain Injury.
Wow. Okay, so that title alone tells us they were looking at the hypothalamus. Makes sense, though, right? It's like the control center for so many things, including pain.
Right? Like think body temperature, hunger, sleep cycles, even that fight or flight response.
Exactly. It's a busy little part of the brain. So did this study just look at people with PTH after mTBI?
Actually, they were smart about it. They had three groups: people with mTBI and PTH, people with mTBI but no headaches, and then a healthy control group. No concussions at all.
Ah, the classic three-group setup. That's really important because it helps isolate what's specifically going on in the brains of those experiencing those post-traumatic headaches.
Exactly. So how did they peek inside their brains? They used this brain imaging tech called fMRI, but get this, it was resting state fMRI.
Oh, so they weren't doing any tasks in the scanner, just chilling.
Exactly. The participants were just lying there, letting their minds wander.
Interesting. Why resting state, though? What's the point of that?
Well, the researchers wanted to see how different areas of the brain were communicating with each other, even when they weren't actively doing anything.
Oh, I get it. It's kind of like eavesdropping on the brain's internal chatter.
Yeah, exactly. They wanted to see if the way those areas were talking to each other differed between the three groups.
So basically, they zoomed in on the hypothalamus and saw who it was chatting with and how strongly in each group. Clever.
You got it. And remember, we're focusing on functional connectivity here.
Right, right. And just for our listeners who might not be brain scientists, functional connectivity is all about how different parts of the brain work together.
Yeah, and it's measured by looking at the synchronized activity between different brain regions. Like if two regions are firing together a lot, they're probably talking to each other.
So basically, the stronger the connection, the better those areas are communicating.
Gotcha. So what did they find? What was different about the folks with PTH?
All right, so buckle up because this is where it gets really interesting. They found that people with mTBI AND post-traumatic headaches had weaker connections between their hypothalamus and specific parts of their frontal lobes compared to both the mTBI group without headaches AND, the healthy folks.
So weaker connections between the pain center and the executive control center of the brain, basically. That makes a lot of sense.
Right. And to make things even more interesting, the weaker those connections, the more frequent and intense the headaches were. Wow, so there's a direct link between the strength of the brain connection and the severity of the headaches. That's huge.
Yeah, pretty wild, right?
Right.
And statistically speaking, that connection was super strong, like not just a fluke.
Definitely not just a fluke. Okay, so we know the hypothalamus is weakly connected to the frontal lobes in people with PTH, but what parts of the frontal lobes specifically?
Good question. The study pinpointed two key areas. One is the middle frontal gyrus, or MFG for short, and then there's the medial superior frontal gyrus, MSFG.
All right, brain anatomy quiz time. Remind us what those frontal lobe regions do again.
So the MFG is like your planning and decision-making hub. Think about organizing your day, making choices, solving problems, all that good stuff.
Ah, so if that connection is messed up, it could explain why people with PTH sometimes feel foggy-headed or have trouble concentrating.
Exactly. And then the MSFG is really involved in emotional regulation. It helps you process emotions, control your impulses, basically keep your cool.
So if the MSFG isn't talking properly to the hypothalamus, could that be why PTH can sometimes feel so emotionally overwhelming, like more than just physical pain?
That's exactly what the researchers are thinking. They're saying these weakened connections could be a big part of why PTH can affect your thinking, your mood, your whole life, really.
Wow, this is a big deal. So it's not just that you have a headache, it's that the headache is actually messing with your brain's ability to function properly.
Yep, pretty much. And that's why this research is so exciting. It finally gives us some concrete evidence that PTH isn't just in your head. Like literally there are measurable brain changes involved.
Right. It validates what so many people have been experiencing. So what now? What are the implications of these findings?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that it opens up a whole new avenue for treatment. If we can identify the specific brain networks involved, we can potentially develop therapies that target those weakened connections directly.
You mean like trying to strengthen those communication lines between the hypothalamus and the frontal lobes?
Exactly. And who knows what that could look like in the future? Could we be talking about brain training games, neurofeedback, maybe even certain medications?
It's definitely possible. And imagine if doctors could use this knowledge to predict who's more likely to develop PTH after mTBI. That would be a game changer for early intervention.
Totally. So to sum it all up, this study shows that post-traumatic headaches after mild traumatic brain injury are linked to specific weakened connections in the brain. And while the research is still in its early stages, it holds immense promise for the development of targeted therapies and preventative measures.
It really is mind-blowing stuff, and it underscores how crucial research is to understanding and treating complex conditions like PTH.
Absolutely. So if you or someone you know is struggling with PTH, hang in there. The science is catching up, and with each new discovery, we're getting closer to better treatments and maybe even a cure. But here's a thought for you to ponder. If we know these specific brain connections are involved, is there a way we can actively strengthen them ourselves? Could mindfulness, meditation, or even certain types of cognitive training play a role in the future of PTH treatment? Keep exploring, keep those questions coming, and who knows what the future holds for conquering those pesky post-traumatic headaches.
I love that. Keep exploring. Always good advice.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
See ya.